and going live on YouTube here in just a couple of seconds.
I hope you're all doing well today.
As I don my geek goggles. Let's see. Let's come over here to Facebook. And there we go. Alrighty. So what I'm going to be painting up today are some miniatures that I've had sitting a long time. And I know there's that sort of semi-painting class, Reaper, Elf guy, but we'll get back to him another time. These guys were really calling to me. And what I'm painting up today are actually some classic Grenadier miniatures. These were made by Grenadier for TSR as part of their Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Gold Box line. Excuse me while I adjust my camera. And come here. Camlink wanting to take over my audio. So what I've got is these classic gold box. These are the hirelings set that they created. These are all your henchmen, all of your bearers and porters and fighting men and so on that you would take into a dungeon with you on an adventure in miniature format. Here's a couple of guys hauling a treasure chest. You know, when the DM says there's a iron strong box full of 1,000 gold pieces, 500 platinum pieces, and various and sundry things, you don't want to throw that on your character's back. He's got dragons to slay. So Grenadier released an entire range, or an entire box set, of these hirelings. Potion taster, for example. You want to find out what the potion does? Here's a guy just stepping right up and knocking back a cold one on your behalf. Or he may just be drinking a cold one on his own behalf. Now, the interesting thing about this line is it is still available. If you go to Mirliton, you can actually buy these miniatures. And I think you get one extra that didn't come with the gold box line. You get a treasure chest, an open treasure chest with loot spilling out of it, which I do not have. Now, these minis I got are not the Mirliton reproductions. These are, in fact, original Grenadier minis from the 70s, which means that they are largely lead in makeup. Not pewter, not white metal. They are lead. So one of the first things I did with them was I sealed them with primer so that they would be safe to handle and that they would not oxidize as quickly. If you buy job lots of old school minis to practice on or to restore or what have you, don't leave them as bare and then handle them. They are lead, they are toxic. Do prime them, and if you're not going to paint them, seal them with like a strong lacquer or something like that. But if you want these Grenadier guys here, like I have, you can get these from Mirliton, and they're made out of pewter or white metal or whatever they're calling it these days. You don't have to track down the lead ones. And they'll be new cast. They'll be nice and crispy. So, as these are hirelings and not individual adventurers, they're going to get a mass painting or army painting job. A little bit better than army painting, I hope, but we'll see. We'll see. So let's see here. Oh, comment already from Vinny. I had two of the classic TSR boxed minis, the Magic User set of 12 pewter and Fighter set of 12 pewter. If I had them today, I'd definitely paint them. On the back of both boxes, they actually included pictures of what they looked like professionally painted. I think that is another set you can get from Mirliton, Vinny, if you check out their website. I'm not endorsing them as a company or anything. But if you desire classic fantasy minis, you can get them from Mirliton. I'm just going to pull this up here. Fantasy 28 millimeter. Come on. But it's on Mirliton's page. I'm just trying to... Is it Fantasy Warriors? No. Maybe Dragon Lords? Did they just all bunch them under? Yes, they bunched them all under Dragon Lords. Here, I will copy that link and paste it. So go there and get your old minis back, guys. Go to Mirliton and get back your good old school minis and try and start over again, because they've got all the cool stuff. And they have done box sets also. You don't have to just buy them up individually. You can get box sets like Orc's Lair, Denizens of the Swamp, Monsters 3, Mixed Fighting Adventurers, Magicians. Let's see, what else? Oh, yeah. 2001, Wizards, Masters of Sorcery, Halfling, Dwarf, Hireling Crew. Yes, the Hireling Crew, the one that I'm painting up here. Fighting Men, the Warriors, Specialists, the Skilled Ones, Females, Children of Diana. And just on and on and on like that. Orcs of the Severed Hand. It's not the most efficient way to get bunches of D&D monsters if you need like 10 skeletons or something like that. As far as I know, Grenadier never sold them that way. To get 10 skeletons, you would have had to have bought like 10 monsters or something like that, which I'm sure they would have heartily endorsed, but would have left you a bit on the poor scale. So let's go ahead and get to some actual painting today. And I'm going to start... Hey, I'm not doing bad at all. What the hell? Well, I haven't started painting yet, Race. Give me a minute. So, we're going to start. We're just going to grab one of these guys. And the thing we're going to do first are the eyes. Now, I know that sounds about as much fun as watching paint dry, which actually is exactly what you're going to do, watch paint dry. But the thing with assembly line painting, that needs a little bit more. Oh, and by the way, I am using Wet Palette. I've talked about Wet Palette before. If you want a refresher on Wet Palette, I will find the video and link it for you, or send you the link. It needs a little bit more. That needs to be a little thicker. The thing with assembly line painting is that you start one mini, you do every part of each mini in the one color that you've got drawn up, and then you cycle back through. If you start over here and just go doop, 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 by the time you get here, this guy hopefully is dry. So, oh yeah, dollar store stuff is definitely the way to go. So the thing about eyes, and the reason that I always say do the eyes first, is if you screw up, you just have tiny little specks of paint to come back and retouch. But if you wait until the last to do the eyes and you screw up, then you've got a whole mini to try and retouch the eyes around. And you might screw up other paints that you've done. So come in here. And I'm basically just filling in the sockets with Reaper Linen White. Redistribute paint to all. Stop stalling in paint. So yeah, I'm just filling in the eye sockets with white. I'm not worried about glopping over the cheeks or the eyelids or anything like that, because I'm going to come back in and repaint those. So we're going to put that right there. You know what? We're going to use the fan a little bit today to help dry the minis. I have a little portable fan here, and it knocked over my brush stand. And I can just point this down at minis and have it paint, or have it dry spots that I painted. And when you're talking about tiny areas of paint, like eyeballs, it'll dry pretty quickly. So let's move on to the next hench guy, This poor belabored fellow who decided to take an iron chest all by himself. I gotta have my preview up so I can see. Yeah, this poor guy here. And I'm going to be honest, I was never going to do anything with these miniatures. They were going to sit in a box and slowly die of lead rot because I thought they were garbage. And then I saw someone's painted up versions of them, and I fell in love, and I was like, no, those aren't bad sculpts. Those are great sculpts. I'm going to go in and I'm going to do those. So they looked fantastic. So I'm going to give Grenadier their due. Now, I'm not an old metal fanatic. Like, old miniatures do not thrill me. They're not better than new miniatures. That is, new miniatures that avoid dungeon punk. I don't like the spiked shoulder pads. I don't like miniatures that look like they belong in the rollerball circuit rather than the gaming table. By the way, there is a science fiction cyberpunk author. Well, he's an author in general by the name of J. Ishiro Finney. And yes, that's his real name. That's not just a handle. That is honest to goodness. His middle name is Ishiro. His Japanese, half Japanese mom insisted on giving everybody a Japanese middle name. So his middle name is, in fact, Ishiro. I was on his live stream last night and I had so much fun. Please check him out on YouTube, J. Ishiro Finney. The alien wearing a human suit. So we're just coming in and we're just filling in the eye sockets with white. Eye sockets with white. Boo! Afternoon delight. Ooh, I just dated myself terribly there. So if you're commenting, I apologize if I miss your comments. And I'm just focusing on this. Hey, Race, am I doing awful yet? Race is a good guy. He and I absolutely don't agree on political stuff, but Race is one of my favorite internet folks whom I have never met in person. An all-around square guy. We're just on different wavelengths. There we go. More white eyes. I wish I could have that fan blowing on me, because it's hot in the city. A little warm here in Florida. Alright. This is one of my favorite dudes, and his sword's a little jacked up. I gotta be really careful. But he's a link boy. And a link boy in D&D, this is another shit that I learned from Gary Gygax's word. A link boy is a lamp bearer in the dungeon, but this guy is no boy. He looks like Robin Hood with a lamp. But you could use this guy as an adventurer. You don't have to say, okay, he's a hireling. Because straight up, he's got a sword and he's got a lantern. It's one of the things that I love about Otherworld minis is Otherworld does similar cool miniatures. I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep these in focus and paint them at the same time. I'm painting around my camera clamp, so it's a little iffy. But it doesn't matter if you get your eye color paint everywhere when you're initially doing these, because you're going to be painting the cheeks, the face, everything. You're going to be painting over that color. So there we go. And speaking of favorite people, another friend of mine is also on Facebook vacation, like I was last week at this time. Jem, if you're out there, Ms. Hawk, hello to you, and I hope you're having a swell day. But no, I went on Jay Ashiro's show last night, and we just shot the shit about working with Gary, getting to know Gary, and RPG stuff. And I'm actually going back on his live stream next Wednesday to talk about other stuff. And of course, yesterday evening, Kyle and I had a theme of the day of just do it, make the call yourself, to organize a games day. But we just talked. We just talked. Now this is an interesting one. Is the wounded guy hanging down, are his eyes open? Are we going to paint them closed? I think I'm going to spare myself and just paint them closed. This guy here is being carried. I keep moving to my left. I'm going to move the camera over a little bit. So, and of course I keep hitting it with my geek goggles. So this guy is carrying a wounded comrade. You guys can see that. And he's still hanging on to his battle axe. He knows what time it is. He knows what's going to go down. What could go down in the dungeon. His DM is Gary Gygax. He's not going to drop his weapon. So, are you dropping your weapon? No. Alright. And again, eye sockets just filled in with white. And as with anything, like I just did, if you get a little too much, just dry your brush off and use it to pull the paint out of where it's puddled up. Because your paint should be thin. It should be skim milk thin. Turn this that way. Your paint should be skim milk thin, not straight out of the tube. I painted straight out of the tube for certain reasons, but don't do it in general on the Mini. It will glop up and fill in details. If this was straight out of the tube and I was filling in these eye sockets, you'd never be able to tell they'd have eyes. It would just look like they had these glops. Here. And plus when it dries, as the water evaporates, the paint will sink down onto the surface. And it'll just leave the pigment behind. Like, see, I overfilled there on that eye. So I come back in and just touch it with a dry brush, and the brush wicks the paint right up and leaves a little bit there. So you can see that. And finally, we come to our two chest-carrying henchmen, who, again, to be honest, these look just more like explorers hauling their loot out of the dungeon. So now next week, if you missed yesterday's live stream, next week Kyle and I are going to be playing Conflict again, which is Kyle's adventure game of modern warfare. And I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm not saying that just because Kyle's my pal and he wrote the game. He has a really kick-ass scenario. I'm not going to give it away, though. You're going to have to tune in and see the cool shootout that's going to happen in that Conflict session. When he told me, I was like, "Oh, do you want to play D&D next week, Kyle, or do you want to go back to Conflict?" And he's like, "Well, Bill, I had this idea that we might play Conflict," and then he told me the scenario, and I was like, "Fuck yeah!" So Conflict is next week on the live stream, on the Wednesday Wastrel live stream. So I'm going to let those guys dry for a minute while I get my next amount of paint left. Now, you know what I was just saying about, don't paint straight out of the tube. Mix it with water. Get it skim milk thin. I'm about to do the exact opposite of that. And the reason I'm going to do the exact opposite of that is the way I do pupils is I'll either do a line or a dot, just whatever my shaking hands can get done for me. And in doing that, I don't want this color to flow off the tip of the brush and fill in all the cracks. This is black, this is pupil, I need a dot. So what I'm going to do with this is, rather than put some in my wet palette, I'm going to put some of this probably I'm just going to reach over and grab a bottle cap and put a glop on the bottle cap and then just dot the eyes one at a time. Now, granted, with men-at-arms, and yes, I'm shaking this right now. That's not me rubbing one out on camera. With the men-at-arms, with any NPCs, the temptation is high just to say screw it and not paint the eyes. In fact, I remember the first set of Grenadier miniatures I ever had. It was mythological fantasy creatures. It was a unicorn and a child, a Pegasus and a child, Hercules, an elf archer, and a Cyclops. And then, like I said, a paints and brushes. But they were most insistent that you not paint the eyes. Not paint the whites of the eyes. It's like, just do a dot of color. If you paint the whites of the eyes, your miniatures will look weird and bug-eyed. But I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case at all. So yeah, I painted the whites on all these guys, and I'm going to come through. Now, if I get the dots on and they bleed over onto the cheeks and forehead and so on, it's okay, because again, the next step is going to be to base coat flesh tones. And I will be cleaning up. I will be painting the overpaint with a couple of thin coats, or how many ever it takes to get rid of that. So let me just check the chats here. No chats over here. And no chats over here. That's fine. So I'll lift my visor up. I've seen, it's funny, I got it like a targeted ad on Facebook today on this computer that I'm streaming on, for like a new Mag Eyes kind of thing, as a new high-tech dealie that's got like a built-in LED flashlight and so on. It was kind of interesting looking, but my Mag Eyes are okay. You know, I don't mind them. I've had these things for, oh, good Lord, almost 20 years now, and I love them. My dear friend Greg recommended them to me, and I dig it quite a bit. I dig them quite a bit. All right. So we got some black, and I think rather than struggle over and get a cap, I'm just going to put some black paint on the back of my thumbnail here, as opposed to on the front of my thumbnail. Wouldn't that be weird? Oh, it's a little Mickey Mouse design. Look at that. Who's the leader of the club that paints some fantasy? MICKEYMOUSE. And that's how he got copyright struck. Alright. So let's start with this dude. Let's get our paint nice and wicked to or our brush nice and wicked to a tip. Come over here and we dip. And we dip. And we dip. And we dip. Okay, pretty good. Good enough for government work. All right, first guy's done. All right, let's check out our Doty halfling and see if he's ready. Look, I'm not gonna lie, and I know the Grenadier guys could have known who this was, you know, almost 40 years before the fact. But in the face, this halfling looks like Brian Peepers. Whoops. Yeah, see, I got that eye, that pupil, like almost in the middle of his forehead, but that's not a big deal. I think part of it is. Let's see. This paint is starting to dry on my thumbnail. That's better. I'd come over here and do the other one. Same thing. All right. So that's a little better. I'll have to clean up the dot that I missed and nailed his forehead. But there's pupils are pretty much done. Let's just put him right there. And I need to fire up Discord for a quick second. I'm waiting to hear back about my friend Tracy. As you all know, I mentioned it yesterday and last night and so on. Tracy Lesh is in hospital right now, and we're just hoping that he's going to be okay. Some health concerns, and we're just going to keep pulling for Tracy. All right. So we have the football helmet guy. Same deal. Just come in, get some of that paint. It's drying up pretty rapidly on my thumbnail. Pupil. Pupil. Come in and touch that again. Sort of more. There we go. I may have to wipe this black off and refresh it. Alright, here's our monster chest carrying guy. Who messaged me? Oh, my buddy Jeremy messaged me on Discord. I don't know if he's watching the stream, but if you are, hi Jeremy. If you're not, hello. Just the same. Alright. Come in. Same thing. I don't know that it's true, but I like to think that Gary had a little input in how these got designed and was like, no, he's got to look like, a Flemish merchant. And so we have this guy here who looks a bit like a Flemish merchant. It's the hat that does it, really. There we go. Don't want to go crazy. If you get it in one and it's just a kind of a faint one, that's fine. There's that one. I'm a little scared. I'm having a lot of success with this. All right. Sven, the oak chest carrier. Let's see what Jeremy has to say. All right, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna put some more paint, some fresh paint on the back before I do Sven. The thing about eye painting, no matter how you do it, you've got to have fine, clean brushes to do it. Your brushes have to taper to their tip. You can't have any paint up in the ferrule. Sorry, just had to respond to a message. Y'all know how it is. You know how it is when you're famous as all hell. By the way, speaking of being famous as all hell, I want to thank everyone who has subbed to the YouTube channel and helped myself and Kyle get views up and get viewership up. Thank you, everyone. Keep boosting that signal. Get us out there. Get us over 1,000 subs. That will just be cool. And when I get over 1,000 subs, I'm going to run an online AD&D game for everybody, or D&D game. More of like a treasure hunt dungeon bash or the dungeon board game mashup, but it'll be live streamed. I'll use Dwarven Forge and miniatures. works. You'll get to see everything cool that I do for my players. Alright, I'm going to have to rework his left eye, but his right eye came out okay. See, I'll have to retouch over on his left to cover up some of the black overpainting, but his right eye is okay. So let's see. How's our medic looking? Okay, he needs eyes. Eyes to see. So I have a question for you guys. Would y'all be interested in seeing, like, if I could do a guest live stream with some of my players, just my Monday night players, particularly those who maybe didn't do RPGs that much until I dragged them into my web of deceit, when they thought they would just be lol playing D&D, and instead, oh, there we go, some nice big pupils to work with. Would you guys be interested in talking to some of my players, seeing some of my players as guests on the show? All right. Let's see. Potion Tester. I'm kind of tempted to have Potion Tester's eyes closed, like he's like he's leaning back and knocking one back. I'm going to do the two treasure guys, and I will leave it to someone to vote to say Potion Tester's eyes open or Potion Tester's eyes closed as to how I should paint them. Okay. Not bad. Got a little on his cheek, but not bad for the first guy there. And here we go. Second guy. He's looking straight ahead. He's got his eyes open. Eyes on the prize. Get out of the dungeon with the loot. Kadot. Kadot. There we go. Alright, so what do you guys think? Potion Tester, eyes open or eyes closed? Nobody's gonna comment in and say the potion drinker should have open eyes or closed eyes. Is he having a Coke and a smile, or is he having a potion and his doom? You guys gotta tell me, engage with me a little bit here. Let me know. Need the info. So let's see what Jeremy's saying here. Man, I just heard a really cool story. A buddy of mine just messaged it to me in Discord, but I'm going to let him tell it. We're going to bring him on the live stream tomorrow. Okay, yeah. So tomorrow at 1? Would it be 1? Or would it be 2? It would be 2, I think. Yeah, tomorrow at 2 live stream, I will have Jeremy Rule, who is, I guess Jeremy's been gaming now for a couple of years with. And Jeremy will tell us some old school geek stories about his dad. So I'm still waiting to hear, though, guys. You got to tell me. Do you want the potion drinkers eyes open? You want me to paint pupils on there, or eyes closed and I just do his pupils in flesh tone? Y'all got to tell me. I'm just waiting. I'm gonna let Jeremy decide because y'all ain't saying. Y'all sitting there all quiet and stuff. I need interaction. I had some good interaction earlier. So I'll ask Jeremy. Jeremy, he's gonna give me a response. Jeremy, he's engaging with me online. Jeremy, he's typing a response. Closed and satiated. There you go. There you go, Jeremy. Thank you. So the potion drinker's eyes, I'm just gonna do his face, you know, monocolor, and not worry about his eyes. Jeremy spoken. In class today. All right, so next up, we're going to start doing their skin tones. And the majority of them, I mean the vast majority of them, I am going to do in tanned colors. Now you might think, well, they're dungeon adventurers, Bill. Shouldn't they be, should they not all be kind of pale? To which I say, no, because your dungeon adventurer, or your dungeon hireling, he wants to spend as little time in the dark of the dungeon as possible. He wants to get the loot, get out, go back to camp, sit in that nice tough circle of men at arms, and keep watch on the gold. Maybe filch a coin or two while his masters are down in the dungeon kicking monsters' teeth in. So we're going to do the majority of these guys in tanned. Now the one exception to this is going to be the halfling, whom I am going to do with the Rosy Triad from Reaper. So we're going to start with tanned shadow, and we're going to use our palette for this. Unlike the black that I dotted the eyes with, we're going with we're going with the palette, the wet palette, and that way we can kind of control the thinness or thickness of our paint a little bit. So let's get this set up, and we're going to start with tanned shadow. Everyone's going to get base coated with tanned shadow, and we're going to build up highlights. Sorry about that. We're going to build up highlights off of the tanned shadow. And there's not much to paint. These guys, these are not Amazon warriors or anything like that. These guys are all fully armed and armored, so it's mostly going to be faces and hands. No feet, no legs, no breasts, no back, nothing like that. Which is kind of the way I like it. I'm not a great skin tone kind of guy. So let's put this here. And the reason I use wet palette is, as always, to keep the paint fresh for many paintings. This is pretty thin as it is, but it's still too thick to just go. I'm going to take some distilled water out of our paint cup. We're going to put this across because I'm not going to directly mix the water. I'm not just going to put a drop of water in the paint. I'm just going to drag some water over. And this is not the brush that I'm going to use. He's gone kind of beaker. I need to clean my brushes, but I figured you guys would probably want to watch me paint, not clean brushes for a half an hour and then paint for a half an hour. So I'm gonna move some water over here, and we're just gonna stir that up, and bam, right there, that's already the consistency of paint we want. So I can come in. And these are inexpensive brushes, so I'm not super worried about getting paint in the ferrule. The ferrule being the metal part here that holds the brush. When you get paint down in there, it swells and you get the beaker effect on your bristles, and you don't want that. So let's see. We have this lovely, this is just an Army Painter starter brush, but I find that it does a really good job of both detail and surface covering. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start, and we'll start back with our chiseler from the Sizzler. And yeah, we're actually going to start with his hands and move on to his face. And a little bit of that. We're going to come in, oops, a little gloppy. We're going to come in and we're going to paint. And you can see that looks a little thin, but that's okay, because multiple thin coats is better than a single thick coat, because you don't have detail obscurement and you get a better shading effect. You get a better color gradient effect, rather. The shading will come from a flesh wash, which is going to go on top of these. And he's holding that spike kind of funny. He's got like a Spider-Man kind of grip on it almost. So we'll have to watch where we get our details. You know, I mentioned earlier that I dig Race Archer, and there's so many other people. And this kind of came up in a discussion with a friend of mine who was despairing over the separation that seems to be growing even in hobbies where we should all be as one. You know, we should all enjoy D&D, we should all enjoy Star Wars and Marvel, and it seems like the id-Paul separations are growing and dividing and driving us apart. And I just want to say that I have been fortunate enough that for the most part, my group is diverse in political opinions. My Monday night group, which is my largest group, is very diverse in political opinions, but we keep it away from the table. And we're all very good to each other. We're all very nice to each other. When one of us needs, the others step up as best we can, even though we're separated by thousands of miles. That shouldn't be a shock, by the way. That shouldn't come as some huge, shocking surprise to people, to anyone, whether you're just kind of cruising by and listening to this and you don't know me, or you know me very well. And the reason it shouldn't be a shock is that's the way it should be. That's the way it used to be. We could disagree and still care for one another. All right, so his hands are done with that first layer, and we'll come in and do another layer, but we're going to start on his face, all over your face. And his hair is going to get painted too, to be sure. And I'll be picking out some details on him, but you can already see the paint is kind of flowing around the eye and making that pupil look a lot less beady. Look at that. In fact, it ran in a little bit too much. I may have to come in and do more pupil. We'll see. Yeah, his pupil just got destroyed by the flesh tone paint flow. Let me see if I can rescue any of that. Nope. I just made it worse. I'm going to have to come back in and redo his eye. See, that's what I was talking about, you know. You come back in and redo it. Well, no, looking at it straight on, it's still okay. It's still okay. So if you look at that there. So we'll come back, and I'll give him some golden locks, or maybe red or brown or black or something like that. But all right, so back to the drying spot with you. All right, let's get Sven of the football helmet here, and same deal. We're just going to come in and we're going to paint his hands, paint his little handsies. And that's not the only coat, by the way. So like after this coat, I'm going to come back, same paint color, same paint shade, and do a second coat before I do the flesh tone shading. See, this is going on nice and thin on Sven. Yes, I name my minis, don't you? There you go. Let's get under the chin. Now I'm going to go, let's see, we're at 47 minutes. I'm going to go for about an hour today. But I will set these guys aside, and because I have the wet palette, I can just snap the lid on, and next Thursday we can just pick it back up. As long as I don't leave this for months. I opened up a wet palette today looking for one of the trays, and oh man, the smell of mildew. That thing's going to have to get bleached and restarted. Florida's a very humid place, and it had been a long time. I think that was actually from the elf painting. There were lots of greens in there. They may not have been green when I started. All right. Okay. So Sven, go stand in front of the fan. And next up, we've got Jorg, the treasure hauler. Speaking of followers, I have a kind of a fun problem to face in my Monday night game, and that is I now have 3 players of the right class and the right level to attract groups of followers. So the party is about to have some camp followers. Isn't that fun for me, the DM? Like aligned. Now, one thing I do want to ask or request, if you haven't already, please subscribe on YouTube, subscribble on Utibble. I want to get up over 1,000, basically 1,000 subscriptions. You don't have to come by and watch the videos day in and day out. That's not what I'm asking for. There are certain things that creators can do once you have more than 1,000 subscribers that I currently can't do. It's not about monetization primarily. It is, in fact, about doing cool stuff. If you don't want to subscribe, if you don't want to send me, or if you don't want to, send me money or clicks or whatever, that's entirely up to you. But please do do subscribe on YouTube. If you never watch one of my videos, if you never click on one of my videos, it still helps the metrics. All right. We have the Flemish merchant here with his chest. He has beautifully sculpted hands. These are amazingly... These are going to hold shading and highlighting so well. They're going to look so damn pretty when we're done. And by the way, this is like the second year of my streaming and everything, unlike the kind of haphazard painting that I was doing on the elf, which I will return to someday, we're writing these guys out till they're done. So these guys are what you're going to see on Painting Thursdays until they are complete. Which is good for me because I'll have miniatures painted. And it's good for you guys because you'll see a project go from beginning to end. And that is way too thick. Oh, I should have showed that to you guys before I started cleaning it up. But that is a result of having paint that's too thick and using too much paint, loading your brush up. It just obliterated all the details. It was just like a bubble of paint. All right. Let's get started on my dude's face here. All right. There we go. Not too bad. Bring him over here. So again, oh my gosh, the last like 5 minutes have just jumped by. But again, tomorrow, our very special guest, oh, very special, sir. Our very special guest will be Jeremy Rule, who is special just because he's a good guy. I mean, my God, I shouldn't have to justify that. But he is part of the Monday Night Crew. Just an all-around excellent dude. He'll be here, and he'll tell us some very cool stories. And we'll just hang out, and you guys can ask him questions too if you want to say, "Oh, what's it really like to game under the great Bill Sylvie? Do you feel like one step removed from Gary Gygax? Does he channel Gary's essence?" Don't do that. I'm kidding. It should be painfully obvious that I'm kidding. And then we have another set of hands to paint. One of the hands is all bandaged up, but the other one, at least I think it's bandaged up. The other one is just kind of hanging right here. He dropped his sword. "You broke my sword!" The Squire of Gothos. One of the great episodes of the original Star Trek, a show that had so many great episodes. People are like, "Oh, Bill, what do you think of Picard? Do you watch Discovery?" No. I think as little of Picard as possible, and I don't watch Discovery. I was not a fan of TNG, DS9, Voyager, or Enterprise. I'm a fan of the original show. I think even the animated show is better than the current crop of, or crap as the case may be, of Star Trek offerings. Yes, I am a grumpy old neckbeard. No, I do not like new Star Trek. The original, the films that supported the original TV show, Star Trek, the motion picture, The Wrath of Khan is good enough to be like standalone by itself as a film. It is a genre picture in a franchise, and it's good enough to be just a standalone science fiction film by itself. That is my considered opinion. I am not knocking the actors and actresses and production people who make new Star Treks, but I don't care for them. I'll knock the writers and producers for making something that I don't like. But I mean, so many of them have said, it's like, oh, well, Kirk was not a good guy, and we're just gonna, we're getting away from blah, 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 and etc. And I'm like, you didn't really watch it, did you? It is and can be very modern. Yeah, where's Bill Shatner's Star Trek show? Oh, but he died in that one episode. They have proven time and again that they are willing to screw with timelines and so on just to make shit work. So don't give me a bunch of guff about that. So all right. Let us paint the refreshed face of the potion drinker. I think I'm going to introduce a potion of healing and refreshment. It's the equivalent of getting a good night's sleep. Your wounds are healed, but you're also just very refreshed. The magic ingredients are going to be the ingredients of Coca-Cola from 1890, from the 1890s. So cocainum. If you're familiar with Red Heat and the memes about cocainum. So this is for Jeremy. Jeremy chose, so my dude's eyes are just going to be closed in the bliss of enjoyment as he's knocking back a refreshing potion. We'll just ignore the fact that, it came out of a moldering chest in the bottom of a dungeon somewhere and has been sitting there for decades and is made from, the entrails and innards of creatures that were slain hundreds or thousands of years before this potion was found. All right. So there we've got our adventurers, except for our halfling. Oh wait, no. I gotta do these guys, which is good because I've got about 3 minutes. Oops, sorry. I should be painting over here where you guys can see it. I'm sorry. So just come in here. Like that. And is his other hand completely hidden? No, not completely. You can see a little bit of it here in front of the axe. So go ahead and paint that as he's holding on to the chest. So you guys can see there. And then I'll just come in and hit his face. I'll hit your face. All over your face. And then we have this guy, and we can see more of his carrying hand over here. I'm glad to have anybody watching my streams, but I wish John Dennett was here. John might be able to tell us who sculpted this. John Dennett is on Facebook, and if you don't know who John Dennett is, I bet you know one of his works. John was an artist for Grenadier back in the day. And if you have watched Stranger Things, then you know John Dennett's work. That's right. John Dennett sculpted the Demogorgon demon miniature for Grenadier back in the day. So what you see in Stranger Things when they are fighting the Demogorgon, that's John's sculpt. And you can also buy a facsimile of his original sculpt from Mirliton. And John also sells a very, very cool deluxe Demogorgon miniature that he did himself. That's just too cool for words. So I highly recommend you add one to your shelf. I'm going to have to get one soon. All right, so we have 1 hour just on the dot. And I have finished these guys up, the first layer of painting, so we're going to go ahead and call it an afternoon. So I'm going to clean this up, move the camera stuff, chit-chat with you guys for a second to wrap. So the next layer will be another tanned shadow layer. Let's get that. Turn off that. And expand that. So, yes, the next paint I do next week will be the second layer of, where'd it go? Of tanned shadow, equally thinned, just do all over. And then I'm going to come in with, where'd it go? Where did it go? So I got rosy, shadow, skin, tan skin. Ah, here it is. It was hidden. I have this, this is Flesh Wash from Reaper. This is Reaper 9253. And we will use it to fill in all the shadows and cracks, particularly on the hands and so on. Once that's done, and we're going to be doing the same thing with a halfling skin, I just need much less of it. We may end up doing the halfling last, like after everybody else's skin tones are done. But after the second layer of shadow and then the wash over everybody to pick up all the details, we come in with tanned skin and do a highlight. We hit the bridge of the nose, the lips, the chin, the cheeks, the backs of the knuckles, anything. And we might end up doing 2 layers of highlights. But then after that, we come in and we dry brush with tanned highlight, where we just do everything with an ultra dry brush. And we're going to do exactly the same things with the Flesh Wash, with the rosy skin colors for our halfling. Now our halfling is going to get some extra highlighting on him because I shouldn't have turned off my camera, so because I'm not sure how well that's going to show up. Not at all. That upright piece you can see against my forehead is the halfling is holding a torch. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to be hitting the halfling with spectral lighting. Or specular lighting, not spectral lighting, specular lighting of from the yellow on the torch, illuminating him as well. I may even do that with the lantern bearer with this guy, although to a lesser degree. But we'll see. We'll see how I feel when I get there, how I'm feeling about their overall paint jobs. And speaking of their paint jobs, I'm going to lean like a lot on greens and yellows and browns with these guys. Maybe some dark blues, possibly some reds, but not a lot of grays and browns, which you would think would be the opposite for dungeon adventuring. But I just want to experiment a little bit. I'm not going to paint them up like clowns where it's, an orc's like, that him, or anything like that. But I do want to have some slightly brighter looking clothes. Interesting point. For a while, my buddy Stuart Marshall was talking about Vikings, the show The Vikings on the History Channel come out, which was just Game of Thrones without magic. And way less incest. And because it was on basic cable, also less bare titties, but you can't have everything. But anyway, Stewart had a lot to say about things. The Vikings always were that, they were black, black, it's mean looking. Yeah, no, the Vikings tended to like bright colors, too. Black clothes were very rare, and they didn't stay black for long, because stabilizing black is really difficult. Have you ever gotten like a brand new black merch shirt, and you're just like, oh, cool, and you put it on and you take it off, and you're like, black all over because it wasn't color fast yet, or God forbid you washed it with some things and everything turned a nice dingy gray color? Well, it's even harder 1400 years ago to get black to stabilize. So the whole everybody, all the Vikings are wearing black because it's grim, and Vikings are grim and it's grim. No, not so much. So these guys I'm going to put in motley. Motley. That's it. Not like jesters or anything like that. But they'll have some color to them. I want them to pop a little bit. Pardon me. Speaking of popping. All right. So that's it, guys. Thank you all very much. Tomorrow, I hope to have an update on Tracy Lesh. I will let everyone know. We will have Jeremy Rule will be on the live stream. It'll be a little later in the afternoon because, I've been doing them at noon my time. That's like 9 o'clock in the morning for him. So tomorrow's will probably be a little later, around 2 o'clock or so, to make things more convenient for Jeremy. You're welcome, Jeremy. And I'm going to go ahead and go. I love you all. Please take care of each other. And remember, nice and decent is the way things are supposed to be. That's the standard. The standard isn't that either side of an argument wins all the time, or even most of the time. The standard is that we're decent human beings to each other. For God's sake, be decent to each other. I love you all. Peace.